Thank you so much, and good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. And my special thanks to the Mark Palmer Prize Committee and to Annie Boyagin and her team and Mike Abramowitz at Freedom House for their hard work on behalf of the prize. We usually think of diplomats as restrained and cautious public officials who are dedicated to the service of their country, which of course they are. My late husband, Mark Palmer, though, considered diplomats also to be a central part of the struggle to bring about democracy. In his book, Breaking the Real Axis of Evil, Mark wrote, "Long before I marched for civil rights, or for democracy in communist Hungary, or for China's Falun Gong, I learned what could be achieved if the powerful and free stood beside the disenfranchised and oppressed. In other words, solidarity." Mark told me a story. During the Orange Revolution in Ukraine in 2004, 2 French diplomats stood inside the door of some Ukrainian student leader's apartment and stopped police from arresting them. Japanese diplomats during the same revolution brought food to Ukrainian demonstrators in the streets day after day, every day, throughout the revolution. In March of 1989, at a historic moment while serving as US Ambassador to Hungary, Mark himself marched in the streets of Budapest with the democratic opposition to show solidarity, to stand for democracy and freedom. The Mark Palmer Prize honors such courage, actions beyond the call of duty, and exceptional achievements by diplomats to protect and advance democracy. Now, this year's winner of the Palmer Prize is a cadre of distinguished and highly courageous diplomats and public officials from the US Department of State and the US Agency for International Development. This group embodies the concept of solidarity. They undertook a clandestine mission in 2023, which became known as Operation Nica Welcome. The return of Daniel Ortega to power in Nicaragua in 2018 was accompanied by full-scale political cleansing. Hundreds, including the opposition, democracy advocates, journalists, and ordinary people who were protesting his return, were arrested and imprisoned. Many of them languished in solitary confinement. Team Operation Nica Welcome was relentless in their pursuit of release of these prisoners. They relentlessly pressured the regime, but to no avail, until recently. Early last year, in January of 2023, Nicaraguan authorities approached the US ambassador to Nicaragua, Kevin Sullivan, who's at my table right there, and to inquire whether the US would receive some 200 political prisoners. The answer, a resounding yes. So in less than 10 days, Operation Nica Welcome was in full motion. Led by the Department of State and USAID, officials from across the US government and members of Congress joined in to work on this unique and unprecedented challenge. One night in February 2023, a group of interagency staff flew to Managua to receive some exactly 222 prisoners and bring them back to the United States. The prisoners were, of course, caught by surprise. What an overwhelming choice, to remain in prison or to face an uncertain future in the United States. Some were even afraid they might be executed. They were leaving their friends and families behind. In any case, with extraordinary effort, within 6 days after landing in the US, all prisoners were on their way to begin new lives in 25 states across the country. Secretary of State Antony Blinken praised the operation as a model of what democracy or diplomacy can achieve for human rights and democracy in the most difficult circumstances. Then Director of Central American Affairs, Patrick Ventrell, said, "From the moment the regime made the offer to Ambassador Sullivan to release the prisoners, our only discussion was what size plane and how to land it." Ambassador Sullivan and his team at State and Marcela Escobari, who's also with us in the audience, who formerly at USAID, and her team have long been strong advocates for democracy and human rights. We applaud their exemplary leadership and wish all members of Team Operation Nica Welcome continuing success. Now, before we present the prize, I invite my fellow Freedom House board trustee to give us his perspective, Felix Maradiaga, who, as you know, was one of the 222 prisoners. Felix.
Lovely message. I apologize if I'm a bit emotional about this. And first of all, Mike, I would like to start by thanking you for this honor of welcoming to the Board of Trustees. It's surreal to me. So tonight, as we come together to celebrate the courageous diplomats and public officials from the United States who were instrumental in freeing 222 Nicaraguan political prisoners, including me, on February 9, 2023, my heart is full of gratitude. I stand before you not just as someone who once was locked away, but as a living proof of the unstoppable force of dedicated diplomacy and the relentless pursuit of freedom. The deepest fear of any political prisoner is to be forgotten by the world outside. Yet, I must tell you that I never once felt abandoned. The efforts of my wife, who is with me here tonight, the efforts of Berta to win my freedom and the freedom of all political prisoners in Nicaragua filtered through to me like whispers of hope that cut through the gloom of my cell. On those precious few occasions when my family could visit me, they sent Berta's message, and she would reassure me, telling me of the many friends tirelessly advocating for our release. Tonight, as I look out at many of those same friends gathered here, I am moved to express my profound gratitude on behalf of myself and all the 222 former political prisoners. Thank you for ensuring we were never forgotten. We are living through a severe global crisis, a democratic recession that has persisted for nearly 2 decades. As Freedom House has reported, the number of democracies is dwindling, while autocracies are on the rise. The shift has led to over 1 million political prisoners worldwide. This is not merely a political issue. It is a profound humanitarian crisis. Having experienced the agony of political imprisonment firsthand, I understand the profound pain it inflicts, not only on the individual, but also on their families and communities. Dictators have weaponized political imprisonment as a strategy to weaken democratic movements. By unjustly incarcerating a political leader, they force entire organizations to divert their focus towards securing their release, often sidelining other critical democratic initiatives. Daniel Ortega of Nicaragua, the dictator, has mastered this tactic, targeting journalists, religious leaders, and the entire opposition leadership. This strategy inflicts immense human suffering and burdens society at large. Victor is in prison for being a journalist who covered a religious event during Holy Week. Anielka is jailed for printing T-shirts with the colors of the Nicaraguan flag. Jason Salazar is incarcerated for being part of the university leadership that protested civically against Ortega. Damaris, an academic and feminist, like thousands of others, oppose the idea of closing Nicaragua's Jesuit university. In total, there are more than 140 political prisoners in Nicaragua. This award isn't just for the amazing act of freeing 222 political prisoners and getting them safely to the United States. It's really about all the time, thousands of hours, that each of you has poured into fighting for freedom, democracy, and treating every person around the world with dignity. This is a shout out to your professionalism, but even more to the heart and soul you put into your work every day. It celebrates how you open your arms to folks like my wife, Berta Valle, who together with Vicky Cárdenas knocked on your office doors again and again to help free Nicaragua's political prisoners. You always listened and did more than that, and you went beyond to make sure everyone was set free. So I want to say a huge thank you from me, from Berta, from our lawyer, Jared Genser, because without your relentless support, their hard work wouldn't have made a dent. During my 21 months in a cell with unbearable conditions, deprived of all reading materials, and deprived of contact with my loved ones, the despair was palpable. Yet, the moment I was informed of our imminent release, the reality of our situation changed dramatically. Being transferred to a military airport and seeing the familiar faces of a diplomatic friend among the welcoming committee was surreal. That was you, Marta. Despite being surrounded by police and military forces, there stood a group of U.S. diplomats, their professionalism and warm smiles reaffirming the solidarity of the United States. They risked their physical safety and their careers to be there with us in Managua. The immense diplomatic effort that culminated in our release could very well inspire a dramatic television series. But more importantly, it exemplifies the highest values of the United States at a time when the credibility of the free world is under scrutiny by autocracies that doubt the effectiveness of Western diplomacy. That day proved that American diplomacy is built on foundational values that include a steadfast commitment to not abandon its friends. Tonight, we honor these values through the Palmer Prize, recognizing the extraordinary contributions of those who stand on the front lines of diplomacy. Because of their courage and dedication, I stand here today, alive and free, able to hug my daughter Alejandra, my wife Berta, after years of separation. Let it be known around the world that those fighting for democracy and human rights are not alone. The United States does not abandon its friends. To all the diplomats, and to all the officials present, your actions have upheld the highest standards of your profession, demonstrating that true diplomacy, true American diplomacy, is about persistence, it's about courage, and an unwavering commitment to dignity and freedom. Thank you for your service, for your bravery, and for making this moment possible. Thank you for ensuring that none of us was forgotten.
And now it's our great honor to present the 2024 Palmer Prize to two Operation Nica teams. The first, representing the State Department, is headed by Ambassador Kevin K. Sullivan former U.S. Ambassador to Nicaragua, and Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of State. All right, so the second team, sorry, the second team is represented by Ms. Escobari here, Marcela Escobari, formerly Assistant Administrator of USAID. Congratulations.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Sushma, and thank you, Felix, for presenting to this distinguished group the story of Operation Nica Welcome. It's an extraordinary honor for me to be here with you tonight to accept this prestigious award on behalf of a large group of dedicated public servants who negotiated, planned, and executed Operation Nica Welcome last year. It's been wonderful to see some of my colleagues who worked so hard on this effort here with us tonight. And I do want to send my regards to the many, many of them who could not be with us here, but who contributed so much to making this happen. I'm also moved to see Felix here tonight and his wife, Berta. He was part of the group that flew to freedom on February 9th of last year. He was part of a remarkable group of brave political leaders, renowned journalists, private sector and student leaders, campesinos, human rights defenders, and local activists from all over Nicaragua. Some were barely 20 years old. Some were pushing 80. Some had been detained for nearly 5 years since the democracy protests of 2018. Their diversity reflected the breadth of the repression that the country suffered under the Ortega Murillo regime, which closed all remaining political space in 2021, an election year in which the regime feared to face any genuine political competition at all. My colleagues and I knew many of these people personally, the prisoners, and we knew the sacrifices that they made, as was said tonight, in standing up to tyranny. We knew or subsequently met many of their family members, and we knew of their sacrifices as well. I know many of you here tonight knew some of the prisoners as well. Their imprisonment was personally painful to us in the U.S. diplomatic mission, in addition to being an affront to international democratic norms. We in the U.S. government had tried many different approaches to seek the release of Nicaraguan political prisoners during that time. With the help of NGOs like Freedom House and other partners in the international community, we denounced their detention. We helped pass resolutions at the Organization of American States and the United Nations calling for their release. The U.S. government and other governments imposed sanctions to hold accountable those who were responsible for violating those rights. We worked to ensure, as Felix said so eloquently, that the public did not lose sight of the humanity or the vulnerability of these people, the prisoners. We also pursued negotiations in various ways without success, but made sure to keep communication channels open with the Ortega Murillo regime in the hope that eventually we would get an opportunity to make progress. That moment came in late January last year. I could hardly believe my ears when I confirmed in a face-to-face meeting that the regime was prepared to release all the prisoners. I could not believe that they said all the prisoners, if we would take them. And that was my job. There began a delicate negotiation on the terms of that release. Nicaraguan Foreign Minister Dennis Moncada insisted that that effort must remain absolutely secret until it was carried out, or it could all fall apart. So together we launched an urgent project that would eventually involve hundreds of U.S. government personnel from various agencies working in complete secrecy to identify resources on the fly and make arrangements to fly these prisoners out, approve their admission to the United States, and make plans to assist with their resettlement here. None of these things was easy. From the first moment, though, and at the highest levels of the Biden administration, there was a clear decision that we must seize this opportunity to rescue this group and to restore hope to millions of Nicaraguans who had lost it. Our pre-existing democracy programs, which I'm happy to say have enjoyed bipartisan support, made it possible for us to do this. Were they not there, we could not have done that. So many people contributed to this effort at the White House, the State Department, USAID, Department of Homeland Security, and even local authorities in Virginia. My colleague Tressa Finnerty deserves enormous credit for setting up a village of volunteers on incredibly short notice that provided first care to 222 Nicaraguans arriving at Dulles International Airport with only the clothes on their backs in the middle of February. USAID and the State Department's Bureau of Human Rights, Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor, and their implementing partners moved mountains to make this rescue possible, as did our own Bureau of Western Hemisphere Affairs at State under the leadership of Brian Nichols and Ricardo Zuniga, who were the officials who got my first phone call and let me convince them that all of this was really possible in spite of everything that they knew. Getting final agreement from Ortega to free the 222 was touch and go until the very last moment. But when it finally came, I cannot describe to you the joy that I felt. We mobilized our embassy team to the tarmac in Managua in the middle of the night to make initial contact with the passengers and board them. Our colleague Marta Youth, who Felix mentioned, was part of our crew of Nicaraguan diplomatic veterans who helped those freed process what I know were very intense and conflicting emotions, notifying families that their loved ones would soon be free, and embracing them coming off the aircraft together with my good friend Marcela was a moment that I can assure you neither of us will ever forget. The success of Operation Nica Welcome in bringing home 222 political prisoners out of Daniel Ortega's prisons into freedom in the United States was a testament to the enduring commitment of the United States to support those fighting for democracy and freedom around the world, even in their darkest hour. This is who we are, and this is who we must continue to be. I would like to thank Freedom House for recognizing that our effort was imbued with the same spirit and dedication that Ambassador Palmer and previous winners of this award brought to this noble cause. Our work together must continue, and we all must continue to support the brave Nicaraguans who are still working tirelessly for a return to democracy that their fellow citizens so desperately want and deserve. Thank you very much.